coming live for you from Amarillo, Texas, out up in Amarillo.
That's right. Well, appreciate you guys having me. It's actually pretty cold today. It was in the 50s. I was pretty surprised for this time of year. So I wish I was in the valley, definitely with the warm weather.
Yeah, we'll share some of that heat with you. It's probably like 90s right now. You know how it is once we get into the month of May.
For sure.
And last night we had a thunderstorm roll in too, and it rained pretty hard. I live in Edinburgh, so
Okay, okay.
it rained pretty hard last night. 1 minute it's hot and dry, and then the next minute you're seeing lightning and thunder all
Pouring
over.
rain.
Pouring rain, exactly, exactly. So fans were joined by Sergio Castillo. We're gonna talk some football. He's got a brilliant track record from his days at La Jolla, West Texas A&M. Played in the NFL for the Atlanta Falcons. Currently in the CFL for the BC Lions, and we'll start there with the Canadian Football League. Of course, this pandemic has obviously taken over our everyday lives, and we're just now seeing restrictions starting to get loosened up. We're seeing pro sports slowly make progress on starting to come back and how they'll come back. Sergio, I just read an article that the CFL is expecting to return in September at the earliest. What were your thoughts on that?
If hopefully that's the best case scenario that we're hoping for, which would put us at least half a season, between 8 to 10 games, because the Grey Cup is always in Thanksgiving. And there's possibility of them expanding the season all the way to December and then having the Grey Cup later on. So it just depends how, all these things, ends up folding up. So, but I think, like you said, with there's less restrictions, and I think depending how, the U.S., does with those restrictions, I believe Canada will follow. I think Canada's doing a lot better in term when it comes to cases, and you're starting to see some of the CFL teams and even of the NHL teams starting to open up their team facilities up in Canada. So I think that's definitely a good sign. It's a positive sign going forward.
Definitely. And did the BC Lions reach out to you when they found this out, or you just found out on your own, or how is that? How have they been handling it?
It's just been, yeah, it was kind of that there was rumors, that the season might be delayed, and especially after seeing the NBA, MLB, and the XFL, just be at a hold right now. So you just knew that the rest of the sports around the world will follow. So the meantime, they just told us just to keep on working out and be prepared, because not at any time, but like they said, hopefully for September, that would be the start of our season.
And right now, like we mentioned earlier, right now your brain, your body's in training camp mode. Uh,
Yes.
on a normal year, how have you adjusted with that as an athlete? Just trying to, obviously being stuck at home.
The body, the mind's like, what, it's about to be the summer, and for football in Canada, that's when football starts. Unlike here in the States, the NFL, high school, colleges start up in August, September, and you kind of have that itch to go back. And it's been a blessing in disguise in a way, for personally for me, because last year, as soon as the CFL season was over, which was in early November, I had a month off, and then had to go straight to the XFL training camp, which was in Houston, all of December, for the most part of December. So I really did not have much of an off season. So this extra time for me, like I said, has been a blessing in disguise, and I've been able just to rest, physically, but more mentally than anything. Where I didn't have to worry about performing every weekend. So for me, like I said, in the personal side, it's been good, because I've been able to just hit the weight room like I've wanted to, run like I want to, and not worry about kicking every day, in that aspect. And then just from the mental part, just take a break, from playing football, because, you go from playing 18 to 20 games in Canada and then go straight to the XFL. It was a grind. I'll say that for sure. So definitely this extra month or two that I'll be getting is definitely helping me to just on the recovery side.
Definitely. So let's turn back the clocks and go back to your La Jolla days. What stood out to you then? Now that I believe you're 2000. I think Clarice told me you're 2000 class 2010.
2009.
2009. Okay, so I'm 2010. So you're a year
Yeah.
ahead of me. So we're
Yeah.
pretty much the same age.
We're
So
right there.
10 years back in high school. Uh, looking back at 10 years ago, Sergio, what stood out to you in your La Jolla days?
For me, it's just the raza, and that's one thing that I truly miss from growing up, not just in La Jolla, but in the valley.
Mhm.
Everywhere you went, there's raza, and I remember my first year coming to, I mean, the first week I was here at West Texas A&M, and I didn't know anything about Canyon, Texas. They told me, hey, it's near Amarillo, and all I knew about Amarillo was George Strait, Amarillo by morning, and when they offered a scholarship, I didn't come on a visit or anything. I just signed because that was the only school that was interested. But definitely one thing that I do miss is just the people. It's just the hardworking people, and it's just I miss going to the pulgas. I miss having elote stands and taquerias everywhere, right? And we have them here in Amarillo, but not as much as the Valley. And the Valley is just it's a very unique place, Bayuco by heart. So anytime anyone tells me, ask me where I'm from, if I'm in Texas, I'm from La Jolla, I'm from the Valley. So it's just, I definitely do have a lot. One thing I do have is a lot of pride coming from the Valley. And I think every year that goes by, I think we're starting to see more athletes uh, earn scholarships to play sports in the collegiate level. And that just gives me tengo mucho orgullo, and just to see, it's continued to grow. And I think that's one thing that I do treasure a lot. It's just back when I was coming out of high school, there was maybe a handful of us coming out every year. And now seems like there's 15 to 20 student athletes, getting scholarships. So I think that's pretty awesome. And then one thing that I do miss, another thing that I do miss is just playing at La Jolla, the stadium. Back when we were one high school, the stadium would be pretty packed, and it was a pretty unique experience to go through.
So West Texas A&M, you mentioned that was the school that you were on their radar. What was that recruiting process like? I can't imagine it's changed much 10 years later, but these days, well, it has changed in a sense because these days it's a social media driven. These
Yes,
kids have the opportunities to tweet out their films and tag these recruiters and these schools in it. And
coaches.
absolutely, because when I played baseball, we didn't have that. I think we had
Yeah,
MySpace,
yeah,
but
that was it.
that was it. And it was just kind of see your top friends list. That was it. And I
Hmm.
know as far as my high school around to Edinburgh North, the recruiting, we didn't reach out to as many coaches as these kids are now. Is that the
Yeah.
big difference you've seen in the recruiting process between then and now?
100%. I mean, even in college and pros, sometimes you'll see guys get opportunities just because they're able to put their film on social media and it's there to the world to see it now. The recruiting process for me, I was very fortunate that I met a coach the summer going to my senior year, Coach Paul Alsbury. He was my first kicking coach,
Yep.
and he's out of Edinburgh,
Yep.
and yeah, and I can't recall. He works at some middle school in Edinburgh. I can't recall where right now, but he was he's the one that really helped me out to reach the schools, and he sent all my film out. And I recall that signing day was on February 4th. It was a Tuesday, and the week before he was calling all these schools, and all the schools were like, oh, we'll think about it, and finally he called West Texas on the Monday before the signing day, and West Texas said the same thing. Oh, we'll think about it. And Coach Paul Alsbury, he lied. He's like, well, he has several other offers on the line. Signing day's tomorrow, so y'all better make y'all decision pretty quick. Hangs up the phone. Baloney. I had no offers. Blah blah blah. And later that afternoon, I remember Coach Carthel, who was the head coach at the time. He called me. He's like, hey, Serge, we're gonna offer you a scholarship to come play at West Texas. And he's like, do you want to accept it? I'm like, shoot, I'll take anything right now. So that was the only offer that I had, and I took it, without thinking about it, and I didn't, like I said, I didn't know much about West Texas A&M. I didn't, I knew it was just a Division II school. It was in Amarillo. And initially when I got here, they told me, "Hey, Serge, you're gonna redshirt 1 year and you're gonna start the next year." But little did they mention that that there was gonna be 3, 4 other guys ahead of me. So when I got to West Texas, I was a fourth or fifth string. And so that first year for me, it was a big mental. I had to break a lot of walls down. One, being away from home, 12 hours away from home. And two, I was used to being at La Jolla where I was playing at everything, and band, I was in the drum line since my freshman year, soccer, varsity since freshman year, and football since my sophomore year, I was a starter. And I think that was something that I struggled with was that getting not used to playing, right? And you coming into a locker room where there's 4 or 5 other guys trying to compete for the spot, and it's not just you anymore. And I recall that first week, I was going through a little discrimination here and there from some of the guys, and because there's not many Mexicanos on the team. And I remember calling my mom, like, "Shoot, I'm gonna drop out. I'm coming back home." And she's like, "What? You were talking all the talk. You wanted to play college ball, and you were gonna leave, and this and that." It's like, you better, walk the talk now. And I was like, all right. I didn't think much of it. I was still kind of had my mind set up. I'm gonna come home. And my mom called Coach Paul, and Coach Paul told me, he called me and told me, "Sergio, if you come back, don't ever talk to me again." He's like, "I stuck out my head out for you. I helped you get a scholarship, and then you're not even gonna give it a more than a week and come back." So that was kind of like the turning point for me. And it's just like, and I think a lot of kids from the valley, and not just for athletics, but like when they leave just in general for school, they don't give themselves enough time to adapt to the new environment. And every time I go back to La Jolla, I tell kids, if you leave, give yourself at least 9 to 12 months to adapt to the new environment, because it's just like when, for instance, you're working out, it's going to take you a while to adapt to the new workout routine or new eating habits. And it's just, you got to give yourself time to adapt, but also to grow. And that's where you get to learn about yourself. I feel like a lot of times we don't spend enough time with ourselves to get to know what we really want, if that makes any sense. I feel like we give too much time to certain classes that we don't like, or to people that we don't like, that we don't spend time with ourselves. And I think me being away from home during those 4 or 5 years, but especially the first year, allowed me to really think and go deep into my thoughts and realize, what, I'm here for a reason. This opportunity was given to me for a reason. And it didn't matter if I was fifth string. Like, at the end of the day, if I was fifth string, I have an opportunity to get better every day. And that was the mentality that I took. And I was very fortunate that I ended up starting the next 4 years.
Yeah. So when in your college career did you realize, like, hey, I can continue this at the pro level? Because or unless when you got there that was your goal, or what
Mhm.
was your goal going into college? Was it just play college and see what happens, or did you always have the pros in mind?
I had the pros in mind, but it wasn't until my junior year that I really just took off. Where, what, I can maybe make something out of this. And that's when my junior year, I went 21 out of 24 on field goals, and was a first team All American. And it was that after that season, I realized, okay, maybe I can do this. And my coaches were telling me, hey, there's several teams interested, or not interested, but at least, hey, you're on the radar.
Mhm.
So that's when the seed was actually really planted. But it wasn't till that till then, I still struggled a lot mentally in the confidence side. And I remember once, it was the spring of my junior year. Like I said, I was an All American, and I was working out with my buddy Aaron Wampler. He was our snapper, and I just started telling him how I still doubted myself so much. And he's like, "Serge, you're an All American. How you doubting yourself, right?" And then that's when he advised me. He's like, "Hey, you should go check out um, one of my professors, who Dr. Michelle Bartlett. She's a sports psychologist at the university." So I went with her on a Wednesday afternoon, and my doubts and my insecurities went back to my dad not being there in my life. Like my dad was in and out of my life, but not really there for like, for school, for football. He was always away. And that really affected me. I was always trying to play, oh, maybe if I'll play better, he'll show up. Right. I had that type of mentality. And I remember Dr. Michelle Bartlett, she made me do an exercise where she's like, Sergio, I want you to write down 5 to 10 sentences. It can be sentences, it can be sayings, it can be any type of goals, or they can be like quotes, anything that makes you feel good about yourself. So I started writing down, dichos, sayings here and there. And she said, Sergio, whenever you feel an ounce of negativity, pull that list out. I was like, all right. So I got out of her office around 3:30 and I went to bed at 11 o'clock that night. I pulled that list out 63 times. That's how many times I thought negative. And it was just crazy. And everyone says, when you're thinking negative, well, think positive. You're like, well, how do I do it? And I think that was a turning point for me mentally, where I was able to build that confidence and be able to step on a field and say, you know what, I can dominate on my craft. So then that's one thing I tell kids nowadays is like, make a list of, of sayings, of goals, or anything of quotes that make you feel good about yourself. Anytime you feel negative, pull that list out. And, there's a saying, you are what you eat, you are what you think. If you think you can do it, you're right. But if you think you cannot do it, you're also right. So before you win the battle on the field, before you win the battle at home, because we all have battles, right? You first got to win it up here. So making that list definitely took me mentally to another level, because physically and technically I had it what it take. I had the ability, but I just needed to add on the mental part.
Definitely. And then you jumped from college to the pros. What was that transition like? And the first team you were on, was that all a surreal moment for you?
Definitely was. I remember the night of the last night of the draft, the New Orleans Saints, it was a Saturday night. They're like, hey, we're gonna invite you to mini camp. So I was pretty excited. And then that Monday, the Miami Dolphins said, hey, they're gonna invite me to their mini camp as well. And there were back-to-back weeks. So I got lucky with that. Went to New Orleans, went to Miami, went to the camp, did not get signed. And then I remember I was living in San Antonio at that time. And do you remember 2014 when the Spurs were playing the Miami Heat for the second time in the championship?
Finals, yeah.
Yeah. So it was game 3. Spurs were in Miami. I'm a big Spurs fan. And the Spurs organization said, hey, we're going to open the AT&T Center, and it's going to be like a real game type of experience. The game's going to be on the TV. So I remember going to the game. Spurs win game 3, come back home super late. And next thing you know, it's like 7:15, 7:30, and I have like 10 missed calls from my agent. He's like, hey, you have a flight to Atlanta at 9 something. I'm like, oh, shoot. So I just started getting my cleats, my passport, everything that I need, right? And I'm on a flight. And it was a weird type of situation, because normally you do the workout, then you sign. Mm-hmm. So I get there, and so I signed the contract first, and then I did the workout. Mm-hmm. And I remember the special teams coach was like, can you punt? And I'm like, yeah, I can punt. But in reality, I hadn't punted in a while. So he told me, hey, Serge, we're going to do 15 punts. Except that's just the number I'm throwing out, right? We're going to do certain number of punts this way, certain number of punts that way. I was like, all right, cool. We don't even get past 4 punts because my punting is so bad. And he's like, we're done. And I could have sworn that I was going to get cut. And I started begging the coach, like, coach, just let me kick field goals. Let me kick field. He's like, no, we're not. I'm like, let me kick field goals. And during that time, Julio Jones was doing his rehab on the kicking field. And I guess he just overheard the conversation. He's like, just let the kid kick, coach. And so I kicked like 10 or 11 field goals in a row. And I end up making most of them. And fast forward to like 2-3 months down the line, when I got cut, a special teams coach was like, if it wasn't for your kicking that day, we would have cut you. So I was like, thank God Julio Jones for telling coach to let me kick that day.
Definitely. Was that maybe one story that stood out to you, that Julio Jones said, "Hey, let the guy kick"? And
Yeah, for reals, because I really thought I was gonna get cut just because my punting was just so bad that day. And but definitely going into that camp, in training camp with the Atlanta Falcons, punting to Devin Hester before every practice, that was pretty awesome.
definitely. And then your journey didn't stop there. You made a career in the CFL, and what was that like with all the traveling and just meeting all these different people? Because
Hmm.
I spent a couple of seasons with the White Wings in Harlingen, and
Hmm.
to relate is that you build relationships. I never thought I'd have friends in Japan or the Dominican or Puerto Rico for that matter. But I think that's the cool thing with this. But for you, you get to meet all these different people and you get to have all these different relationships.
Definitely, that's what I tell kids. Like if you have the opportunity to leave the valley, to even if you're not gonna play sports and to attend college outside the valley, like do it because one, the valley's always gonna be there. But these friendships, these relationships that you build over the years is going to be something that you'll have forever. Now I have friends all over Canada, all over the US, all over Mexico. So I think that's pretty unique. But when I first went to Canada was in 2015, and initially I left because I only had $107 in my bank account. I was working at Southside High in San Antonio, and the school year was already going to be over. I'm like, shoot, I need a job. So, and I was kind of hesitant going to Canada because, they don't really show CFL down in the United States when it comes to publicity. So I didn't really know much about it. So initially when I left, I was with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I didn't play one down at all the month that I was there because I had Justin Medlock, who was my idol, one of my idols, favorite kickers growing up. And so he was a man there. And I remember on a Monday, Hamilton released me around 8 o'clock. So I go straight to the bank and I get all my money out. I'm like, I'm definitely not coming back to Canada. Around 12 o'clock, I was gonna have a flight back to Texas. And within that 30-minute period that I went to the bank, Winnipeg called me. They're like, hey, you're not going back to Texas, you're coming back, you're flying to Winnipeg. And flew to Winnipeg and ended up signing there. And they told me, hey, the plan for you is not to play till 2016, or at least compete for the job till 2016. So I was like, okay. So my mentality is I could see the positive or the negative, and I could have complained and moaned about it, or I could have said, you know what, I'm one day closer to playing. And going back to the quotes that I would write every day I would write one DC, one day closer. I'm one day closer to playing. And sure enough, 6, 7 weeks later, I was blessed with the opportunity to play. And my first game went 5 for 5 and kicked the game winner. But I think if, let's say I would have gotten the opportunity, but mentally throughout those 6, 7 weeks, I would have just been moaning and not been blessed, like not blessed, but like fortunate to with that mentality to have the opportunity to practice every day. I think I would have not have been ready for the situation. I think too many times when we don't get what we want, we can easily just ponder on the negative, and then when the opportunity comes, we're not ready. So I think the mental aspect, it was definitely big for me during that time.
Definitely. And right now you mentioned you had spent some time in the XFL for the for Houston. Um, what was the difference as far as a competitive level from the CFL and the XFL?
I mean, it's the level I would say is pretty much the same. It was is I thought an XFL was a lot faster in terms of like just the speed of the game, and I think it was everything was totally obviously new, but we didn't know what to expect. I remember the first game, we were like, man, if we get maybe 5, 10,000 people, we'll be lucky, and we're fortunate that every game, we got 18, 19, 20,000 people. So it was definitely an awesome experience to be part of, and especially being in Houston, being closer to home. My mom, my family from the Valley, my friends were able to see me almost every game. My girlfriend, her family were able to come from Amarillo. So the fact that I was able to play in my home state was definitely a blessing.
I know when teams get a product from the state, Houston just being what 5 hours from the Valley. Was there a little bit of buzz going around with Houston with the Roughnecks that we got a Texas boy on the roster and kind of close to home type of deal?
For sure, especially when the first game they made me do like this announcement deal, like basically welcoming the city, the fans to this new league, and I got to do it in English and Spanish.
Sweet.
So, but it was pretty funny because in English I followed word by word. They gave me a little script, and in Spanish I just went totally off. I totally went, Valley status, what's up, raza, and all this stuff. So after that, I think there was definitely a lot of buzz, especially knowing that there's a Latino on the team, representing the state of Texas.
Definitely, yeah. And in any of your teammates stood out? Anybody that was recognizable that was on that team with you? Anybody that you knew?
Obviously PJ Walker, our quarterback, he was a beast. He'd be third down and like we're gonna kick a field goal, and then he would pull magic out of nowhere. Our one of our receivers, Cam, he was pretty fun to watch, and just our whole defense. There were just a bunch of animals everywhere, and they were just they always make plays. When we needed them.
Forgive me, but where would y'all play? Where would y'all
Mhm.
have home games at?
At the University of Houston.
Okay,
So
cool.
we trained there, and we had all our meetings. Our weight room was there for a little bit of the time, and then we used their stadium.
Sweet, definitely. And and then these days, you mentioned because of the XFL folding, you're back in the CFL. Um, how did that work for the players? With obviously it not being, it's not, you guys are not at fault with the league folding. Did
Hmm.
you guys have something set up, planned to say, okay, now you guys are free to go sign wherever you want, wherever that may be?
Yes, as soon as the XFL said, "Hey, we're gonna declare bankruptcy. We're not gonna be able to, obviously pay you guys anymore," we were free to go. So, I was very fortunate that BC still had me in mind and signed a 2-year deal with them. So hopefully, we get this year on the road, and that'll be the first year of my contract. But if all goes well, I'll be locked in for till 2021.
Definitely, that's good. And you mentioned the Grey Cup. There's a lot of travel involved with it.
Hmm.
I think that was one thing that article was kind of hitting home, was that the uncertainty with all the travel, and obviously these days the less travel the better. Where do you feel that the Grey Cup is at if we do get a season going for you guys?
Well, I mean, I think I read an article yesterday saying where they can probably host all the games between divided between two cities, and they were talking about Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. They have the lowest amount of cases, and they're the two closest cities together with the lowest amount of cases. So 5 teams would go to Saskatchewan, and the other 4 will go to Winnipeg. So hopefully they can come up with something. The thing about those two cities, it gets really cold really quick. So unlike in BC, we have a dome, so we're very fortunate with that. But I mean, hopefully something works out. I think if the MLS gets going and they're allowed to travel, I think that'll help us because there's you have the Vancouver Whitecaps, which we share the stadium with, and
Mhm.
I think if the Whitecaps are allowed to travel and play in different venues, I think that'll happen the same with us.
Definitely. Switching gears just a little bit, while we were all in quarantine for the month of March, back half of
Hmm.
March, all of April practically, outside of football, what kept you busy?
So my girlfriend, her younger brother, and I, we own a gym here in the Amarillo area. So we were fortunate in that aspect that I can still go work out every day. But so I was doing like a 2-a-day type of deal. I go lift in the morning, and then the afternoon, we'll go play soccer. I'm a big, big, big soccer fan, and I used to play goalie back in high school. So I was just doing goalie workouts in the afternoon just to, help me with conditioning, lose a little bit of weight. But at the same time, those are all explosive drills, which help me for kicking. So I was doing that and then just watching a bunch of reruns on YouTube of different games. But that was pretty much it, man. So just as and more than anything, also relaxing too, just from the long CFL and XFL season that I had.
Any Netflix, Hulu?
Oh, definitely. Netflix. I started watching Ozark. Pretty good, pretty stressful. I'll
Oh
say
yeah.
that for. I'll say that for sure.
Did you finish? Where are
Um,
you at with it?
no, we're in season 3, like second episode. So
Oh man, it's
yeah,
so
I hear it gets pretty crazy. So
yeah. Season 3, to be honest, it came out I think maybe like 2-3 weeks into this whole deal. So
hmm
I'm the kind of binge watcher where I'll watch 2, maybe 3 episodes and stop. But man, I think it took me a week to watch season 3. It's so you guys are gonna get hooked. It's not you're hooked already, but season 3,
yeah,
it's so good. Well, what
yeah,
else?
definitely.
What
Um, yeah, I'll watch reruns of Narcos. I've watched all of it. Club de Cuervos sometimes.
okay.
Club of Crows. I don't know if you've seen that one. And then La Casa de las Flores, House of Flowers. It's a Spanish comedy show. So it's 2 seasons in. So and that's been those are pretty much it. But and the MJ, The Last Dance.
Oh yes, yeah.
Wait,
I need to watch the last 4 episodes. I kind of fell behind, but I haven't
yeah,
recorded. But they were so good.
yeah, you get hooked on it. And it's just, man, there's only 2 episodes per week. So, um, but yeah, it was I actually loved it a lot. I got to learn a lot of stuff with MJ that I did not know. So,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, and I'm not the biggest basketball fan, and for guys like us, I mean, we saw MJ play, but I was just a little baby. I was
exactly.
a kid. So, a lot of those 90s games that they showed, I'm sitting there with my parents and they're like, "Man, you were only like 3 or you were
Yeah.
5 when that was going on." And, but
Uh-huh.
it was definitely a really good documentary to see the different sides, especially with MJ. Um, my sister was like, "Man, I'd be afraid to play with him because the guy was a competitor."
He was. He was. And now as I grow older, I'm a big hardcore Spurs fan. And I wish I could go back in time and appreciate not only Tim Duncan and Tony and Manu, but I wish I could appreciate Kobe, Shaq, like and what they did,
Yeah,
and that's how I'm kind of taking it right now. Is like I'm appreciating LeBron, and Kawhi and all these guys are doing, and like Tom Brady, because this is history that's happening. These guys are making their own blueprint, and it's rather than be hating on them, is like I'm just gonna
yeah,
I'm gonna appreciate it more, and I think that's one thing that one of my uncles was telling me. He's like, he's a big Spurs fan. He was like, man, I didn't like the Bulls growing up, because obviously they would always win. But he's like, I wish I could appreciate it more, now that he's watching the series. So
mhm.
definitely an eye opening.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way with guys like, Tom Brady and Peyton
Yeah.
Manning. Peyton Manning was another one because once they're done, that's it, and we will
Yeah.
only be able to look back and be like, man, those guys were really good.
Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
Before we go, a kicker. What kicker growing up did you look up to and say, hey, that's who I mold my game after?
Like I said, Justin Medlock, who was, when I got to the CFL, he was already established as if one of the best, if not the best. He's done it for so long. But obviously you have Adam Vinatieri, but for me also was Olindo Mare from the Miami Dolphins back in the day. And those are the guys that I look up to. But now when it comes to guys who I want to be like, obviously I'm playing my career in Canada, is I want to be I want to have a long career like Justin Medlock, and initially when I first got to Canada, we were in the same team. So we were competing for the same spot. So we didn't get along in the beginning, but now we bonded. Now we're really, really good friends, and he's one of my mentors. So if I can have a career, of over 10 years, and have a successful career as he has, that's definitely the goal. But I also what I learned from him was how to be a pro, how to act like a pro, because like I said, I could kick the ball very well, but the mental aspect, and I think is, having the confidence of going into a practice. Okay, when it comes to punting, this is where we're going to work on. When it comes to field goals, this is what I'm going to work on, kickoffs, etc. So, and just commanding a practice and being able to take control of, of things that you can get better on. I think that's what definitely I take a lot from Justin Medlock.
Career long field goal.
Career long field goal was my junior year in high school against Judson High in the third round, 58 yards, right before 58 yards, 4 seconds, right before the half. And I didn't realize it was 58 yards when I went to go attempt it. It wasn't until I kicked the ball and I look at my holder, Adrian Bautista. He's like, "Bro, you realize we're in the middle of the field and we're playing in Laredo, and they had the Texas logo." And I looked down, I'm like, "Oh shoot, we're on the logo." and that was pretty unique. And then fast forward to my junior year in college, we're playing Abilene Christian. It's our homecoming game, and we're struggling the first half. I think we're winning 7-0, and it's just a tight game. Again, 4 seconds right before the half, and we go to attempt a 56-yarder. And so I line up, and in the meantime, I'm about to kick the ball, and then my holder, John McSheffrey's like, "Hold on, we're missing one guy." And I'm like, crap. Well, in the meantime, I still did not know where I was going to kick the ball. Like, I was just still trying to find an aiming point. And behind our field goal post on the north side, that we have a big hill, and there's always kids playing around in the hill or sitting down. And I see this kid going up the hill, and it was like aimed at the right upright. I'm like, all right, that's where I'm going to aim. And so it was a blessing in disguise that my boy Taylor McCullough, not to throw him under the bus, he was the one that was missing on the line. And so, but that gave me extra time where to aim. And sure enough, I kicked it. And it was funny because the ball had not even crossed the upright. Next thing you know, my snapper, Aaron Wampler, he has me on his shoulders. It went right through, and it was a turning point for the game. And then longest field goal in the pros was 56.5, which could be 57, right? Just count 57, yeah. Right? And I remember it's 2017. I'm with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and we have, like, I kid you not, like a 2.5, close to 3 hour rain thunderstorm delay. Wow. And we're playing the Toronto Argonauts, and that was the first game that we had a new head coach, June Jones. We were 0-8. We hadn't won a game. We were struggling. So it was right before, it was like a minute left in the second quarter. And I remember June Jones calling out the punt team. And I called him, and I remember having a conversation with him that week. I'm like, "Coach, I haven't kicked a lot. Use me." And he's like, "Well, I'm going to use you." And I was like, "All right." So when fast forward to the game, he calls a punt team. I'm like, "Coach, let's kick it." And he was just super chill, super calm about it. He's like, "You can make that?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, punt unit off, field goal unit go." And it was a 56-yarder, went right down the middle, turning point again. And then we ended up winning our first game that year.
There you go. It's a good story. We're joined by Sergio Castillo here on our Sideline Sitdown. Sergio, before we go, any shout outs you want to give to any family or friends or teammates?
Just all my coaches from La Jolla, there's a lot of them, Coach Mia, my soccer coach, Coach Tamez, my football coaches, Coach Garcia, Coach Garza, that I had. And, there's just a lot of people who believed in me, and my mom, my girlfriend. I think you need a good, one thing that I advise to the young high school athletes nowadays or colleges, find a group of accountability, find a good circle of friends, because there's going to be moments, you might have a good head and you have the goals that you want to attain, but there's going to be moments that are going to be tough and you just want to throw in the towel. And that's where your accountability comes in. And I'm just very fortunate to have these people around me to have helped me along the way, especially in the moments, when I wanted to give up, especially in 2017, after I tore my ACL, with 4 games left in the season with Hamilton, I was without a job for a year and a half. And definitely having, my girlfriend, my mom, and, Justin Medlock, in my corner is like, don't give up. You're going to have a contract pretty soon, but you just got to be ready. So, but yeah, I appreciate La Jolla. I appreciate, where I came from. And, I don't take it for granted. Every time I go home, it seems like I was just there yesterday. I was just a teenager, just trying to figure out my journey. But it's turned into a beautiful journey through the highs and the lows. But I would have never known where this journey would have taken me if I've never take that step forward.
Definitely. So at 3:00, we're going to be joined by a pair of San Benito products, both Miranda Vallejo and Aaron Medrano. They're currently playing basketball up at Schreiner University. And then later today at 5, Carissa Garcia, who helped put this show together, her and Clarissa Navarro are going to be joining the show. So we're going to keep the La Jolla train rolling.
That's right.
We're going to go from La Jolla to San Benito, back to La Jolla. Carissa Garcia and Clarissa Navarro are going to be talking some softball, and we'll be talking about their journeys as well. So, Sergio, thank you for making the time out of your day to join our show and tell your story.
I appreciate you guys having me. Échale ganas.
Sir, stay home, stay safe, and hopefully you guys can be back on the field and come September.
Yes, that's the plan, God willing.
Yes, sir. We'll see you.